Having a satisfying and rewarding social network of friends is one of the most important things in our lives. It's well documented that we live longer, we live healthier, and we feel more fulfilled when we have quality relationships with people that love us for who we truly are. Now, whether it's 2 friends or 20 friends giving you that satisfaction, that number doesn't really matter, right? What really matters is that when you step back and look at all your relationships and you feel content, you feel that everything is in the right place. So in this video, I go over different ways that you can honestly assess the friendships in your life, and I give you the tools to help you make better decisions on who you choose to surround yourself with. If you're new to the channel, I'm John Namchi. I'm a software engineer at Bloomberg living in San Francisco, and also the founder of SIMVO. At SIMVO, we strive for understanding the complicated things in life so we can develop wiser perspectives that help us find contentment and cohesion. All right, so to start off, I'm gonna explain why making friends, or really good friends, is not an easy thing, right? The first reason is that we need to figure out for ourselves what makes a good person for us. And this is not something we're taught in school, right? There's no school of friendship. So we kind of have to figure all of this out for ourselves. And since we have to do this from when we're so young, when we don't know anything, right? Since we're 5 years old, something like that, things kind of just happen, right? And we kind of get locked into a certain set of social patterns. And those can become very difficult to change as we get older. Now, the second reason is, we have these strong human instincts to feel like we matter, right? That we're part of a group, and especially to avoid, things like FOMO. And sometimes these human instincts can become so strong that it clouds our judgment, of knowing and choosing the right friends for us. And then lastly, modern day programming and influences such as social media, these give us certain impressions on what friendship should be about. But oftentimes, it can cause us to not feel satisfied with doing friendships in our own ways. And we end up moving towards arrangements that actually just aren't authentic for us. So because of all these things, it's totally understandable why many people may not be fully satisfied with their social life. However, starting with this awareness, we can forge a path towards gratifying relationships that make us truly satisfied. All right, so now I'm going to talk about the framework with which you should be thinking about your friendships. So to better navigate our friendships, I think it starts by understanding that there's basically 3 categories of friends that you would have in your life. You got category 1. These are your close friends, your ride or dies. They'll drop anything for you. They'll take you in, lift you up. You can share, really negative things about you, and they'll still be there for you. There's an implicit understanding between you two that you can't describe. Then next category 2, would be your good friends. These are people you genuinely trust and you enjoy spending, time with. They show up for you in meaningful ways, and they're still solid, reliable friends, and there's mutual respect and care at the core of that. Then the last category of friends, I would say, are category 3, or fringe friends and acquaintances. So these are people you enjoy spending time with, often connected by shared interests, values, or circumstances, but the bond just isn't as deep, but that's okay because, they still add fun, variety, and new perspectives to your life, even though that connection is not as strong. Now, you will be in certain categories, for different people, and those people will be in certain categories for you. And what I found is, what makes people start feeling bad really at the core of it is when they start sensing a discrepancy in where everyone puts each other in their categories. So for example, if you're part of a friend group whom you consider your main close friends, right, your ride or dies, but you feel that, you're just a good friend or kind of side character to them, that's gonna suck a lot, right? On the flip side though, if you kind of know someone, who really values you, but you feel there isn't much of a connection beyond something surface level, you can also feel a bit uncomfortable with that imbalance. So these are all potential sources for why you could feel unsatisfied with the friendships and relationships in your life. In truth though, I would say that, the secret to fixing this is actually pretty straightforward. You basically need to, 1, correctly categorize your friends, and 2, reorient your feelings and expectations based on these categories. So starting with this framework, you can then understand and make decisions from the daily events and the details that happen in your social life. So now I'm going to talk about a few ways that we can identify who our closer friends should and shouldn't be. So the first thing I have for you is this thing called the idea or trip test, okay? I think this test is paramount in helping you identify who your true close friends are. It basically goes like this. So say you have an idea for an outing or you want to organize a trip. How do you feel when you think about putting the idea out there to your friends? Do you sense like you'd run into resistance, thinking about it? Or do you feel like you may have to convince some people? Or do you feel like some people would only go if enough, of a crowd is going or someone specifically is already going? If this happens repeatedly, then this is the most direct evidence that those people may not be, your category 1 friends. Now, I wouldn't test this, with your friends with a fake trip or something. That's not really what I'm talking about. I'm more, saying for you to think about something you genuinely want to do, and see how you feel when you imagine sharing that with your friends. When you bring up an idea to your true friends, you should always feel, excited and that that they are going to consider it. Your true friends would at least try to make it happen, or they'll really want to, and you'll know if they can't that it's for a real, genuine reason. Also, a note on you being the only one going on that trip, you alone should always be enough for a true friend to want to come as well. And that whole process of planning and speaking and convincing should just be smooth and easy. So actually, that also means, on the flip side, it's true too that if you find that there are specific people who are always down for your ideas, that might be a clue that they could be a better friend than you may think. All right, so the next clue you can start thinking about is if you feel like you have to fight to maintain your status in the group. One thing I noticed was that in some social circles that I was in, it got very tiring to maintain my place in them, It felt like even if I got to a point of great familiarity and closeness, like I was part of the group, I felt that if I slowed down, for a week or two, my status would plummet on that group, If I missed a few outings, there'd already be things that I'd have missed out on, inside jokes that I didn't get. Then when I'd come back, I feel like I was just playing catch up, just to kind of feel like I was back in the group. So, if you always feel like you need to, be present to maintain your position, I definitely wouldn't consider this, a group to be your category 1 friends, They can be your good friends for sure, but, your true friends will never make you feel left behind, even subconsciously. Now, of course, you can't disappear, but, you should feel like you can focus on your personal things like your career, your aspirations, or, some relationships, and you can come back to an equally welcoming and loving group. So when looking for your true friends, you should always try to follow this feeling of comfort and ease. Now, this one is a little bit more subtle, but still holds true, and that's if you feel slightly unheard. So do you feel like there's a part of you that your friends don't see or know or overlook? Maybe you're insanely talented at something, but no one knows about it. Or maybe you feel underestimated and you think, one day they're gonna finally realize how great I am. Well, I would say these thoughts would mostly arise when you're not surrounded by your true friends either. Category 1 friends will always be asking about and also explicitly looking to find the things that make you great. And even more so, they're gonna make you feel like you achieved and deserve these qualities wholeheartedly. On the flip side, some people will sometimes wanna avoid seeing the great things with you, or even try to downplay the great things about you. Now, not too explicitly, but a common setting this happens in is when your achievements have been made through hard work, right? You've done something, you've been disciplined over time, and you've achieved something. Then, you notice other people are trying to assert that it may be due to something else, that suggests you were less deserving, maybe by luck or genetics or something like that. A big thing for me was, some of my friends who just call me a natural athlete like that, and which is true in some respect, but really at the core of it, a lot of them don't understand the lifestyle and the athlete's lifestyle that, I maintain and the things I do every day to maintain and improve my athletic life, From a young boy, I've trained extremely hard, hours and hours a day for years, to hone the talents I was given. And it's definitely the decades of training and hard work that put me on a different level. And I know, some people may attribute it to athleticism or whatnot, but I know my true friends, they really know what's up. So the important thing here is that people will either make your greatness shine easily or they won't. And you don't need to explain or convince anyone of your greatness, especially to your real friends. All right, so then the next thing we have, to kind of think about is how do you feel about your friend's success? I think this is another great one because instead of how your friends feel towards you, this is about how you feel towards your friends. Again, if they're your true friends, you would always feel immense pride, happiness, gratitude, for their success. You'd feel so happy, to have friends doing great things, and you'd feel privileged to be around such people. You'd be also excited about all the new things that are now to come from that success. On the flip side, if you get that pit in your stomach feeling, or some kind of slight jealousy, or you feel like, it's undeserved, maybe, this might be a sign of certain tension in the relationship. Another thing is if you feel a sense of fear, like maybe due to the success, this friend now is going to drift away or move on to a different crowd. That's for sure a sign that they're not your category 1 friends. They may be better off just be categorized as just a familiar or fringe friend instead. When you have friends, to whom you'd react in that manner, it means that only certain life circumstances or specific things are keeping you guys together, rather than your genuine loyalty and love for one another. Now, this actually flows directly into the next idea, which is how excited do you get before meeting your friends? In the moments leading up to the meeting or your outing, do you feel like you need to mentally prepare, to see your friends or kind of get ready to bring some kind of special energy? If you do, it probably means that you don't feel 100% comfortable with them yet, or you sense, that things can still go wrong. That uneasiness could be, from the fear of getting made fun of, or fear of, getting in a situation where you feel left out or not performing optimally at the social gathering. So if you're feeling these things, then I would say those are definitely category 2 or 3 friends. Going to see your category 1 friends should always be like going to see your close family. You should always feel extremely excited or wholeheartedly comfortable, right? Because you know that you're accepted for who you fully are, and you don't need to do anything special to assert that. So definitely, when you head out to your next outing, think about how you feel and assess, or assign the correct category to that event accordingly. This understanding alone is going to bring you a sense of ease, and you won't be feeling bad, nervous, or out of place when you're heading to such gatherings, because, you've now added the correct context to what you're going to. A note on that, actually, I have to say, is these outings, where you need to kind of prepare and bring this energy, these are often ones, with less certainty, where new things could happen. These would be networking events or social events with new people. I still highly recommend that you keep going to such outings regularly, because that's how you find new opportunities to grow and expand your network and opportunities. Like I just said before, you just need to be clear with yourself with what you're getting yourself into. All right, so now the last thing we can do to help understand our relationships better is by imagining the scenario of a particular friend group that you are in, either disbanding or breaking apart. It could be from a falling out or some other event, doesn't really matter. It's just now no one sees each other, right? The group is over. How do you feel about thinking about such an event? To me, there are 2 possible things that you'd end up feeling. Either you would be heartbroken or you would feel relieved. If you feel relieved, then it probably means that you're joining this friend group, out of FOMO, or to fill a certain void caused by that group. So when the group gets disbanded, this pressure subsides and you don't feel like you're missing out on anything more, so you get relieved. Now, does this sound like something that would happen to a friend group of your true friends? I don't think so, right? With your true friends, imagining the group being disbanded, you would feel heartbroken, right? You'd feel sad, like it's a huge bummer and a huge void has been created in your life. So for the various friend groups that you're a part of, I really encourage you to try this exercise and assess how you feel. It can tell you a lot about how your subconscious truly feels about each of those groups. All right, so overall, I hope this video helped you gain a little more clarity on your friendships and, gave you some tools to help you feel more in control of your social life. So take the time to figure out who your real close friends are. And once you do, lean into those relationships even more. And for those who may not be your close friends anymore, still show up in the same way, but also just appreciate those relationships for what they are and nothing more. And indeed, when we do let go of certain relationships, it may be difficult to fill that void of a close friend again. So in a future video, I'm going to be going over how you can build and grow your own circle of friends from scratch. But until then, I will see you in the next video.